Hey Mandy, why don't you go first? Tell us what you've been up to because you've been having adventures all over the place, haven't you?
So I've taught the last peace class of the year, the 40th peace class,
Yeah.
the last day of June. Then I traveled for a little over a month, made it around the eastern and southern United States by car and van. So I made it as far as Maine, in the islands of Maine, and as far south as North Carolina. So it was a lot of waterfalls, pond swimming, ocean swimming, a lot of natural waters, forest. So it was my annual trip. I do this every summer where I take at least a month to be in nature. And generally, in the past, in the last 5 years or so, it's always been Pacific Northwest. So
Ah,
Mount Shasta is the furthest south point, which is the edge of California, and then up through Oregon and Washington.
yeah,
So this is the first year that I've done the East Coast, places like Vermont. So very beautiful, charged, spiritual,
hmm,
sacred
right.
land on that side of things. So that was a beautiful experience. And then I came back and went right into preparation for a peace concert, actually a 2-day peace event that was on at Meditation Mount in Ojai, California.
All
And
right.
not sure if you guys know much about the spiritual history of Ojai.
Well,
Ojai,
Krishnamurti was there, wasn't he? Yeah.
exactly. So
Right.
Krishnamurti's center is there. Annie Besant, who led the Theosophists after Helena Blavatsky,
Hmm.
she turned up in Ojai in the 1920s and got intuitive information that it was essentially focusing in the energies of the next era, the era of light or the era of peace, and
Right.
that land was an important sacred center of what was to be born. So with her 1920s money, and when things were a lot less expensive, she herself with her own money just bought up a ton of it and
Oh,
said, I'll hold on to this and
hmm,
I'll be willing to sell it to those who are here to do something spiritual with the land.
right.
So that turned into the Krishnamurti Center,
Hmm.
landing there, Meditation Mount, which is connected to the writer and the channel Alice Bailey and the Alice Bailey works. And then there's a Theosophy Center there.
Hmm.
There are maybe 5 sort of spiritual communities that are right there, and it's quite a small place, and the
Right.
valley is very charged. So anyway, I was part of this 2-day peace event that I am part of a group of 4, and so the other 3 are Dot Maver, who runs the National Peace Academy and has run peace organizations in the United States since the early 1980s, and
Hmm.
a woman named Fumi John Stewart, who runs May Peace Prevail on Earth, which is the Peace Pole organization,
Right.
which started in Japan.
Hmm.
And basically in Japan in the 1970s, there's a fine artist, a sculptor, who saw in his mind's eye these peace poles. And originally they have 4 sides, they're square. And
Yeah.
on one side it says in Japanese, may peace prevail on earth.
Hmm.
And so the Peace Pole project in the 70s was a Japanese project, and they started popping up all over Japan. And
Right.
then when he passed away, his daughter took over the organization and made it international. And in the late 70s and early 80s is when peace poles started popping up in other countries around the world. And Fumi John Stewart became the international director of May Peace Prevail on Earth back then in the 80s. And so she is she's based in San Francisco. The May Peace Prevail on Earth has a headquarters in Tokyo, a headquarters in upstate New York. And anyway, so Fumi, Dot, and then the fourth person is Michael Lindfield, and he has been board president of Meditation Mount for many years, but he was at for 13 years, he was at Findhorn when it began, and he was the director of programs at Findhorn for many years.
Okay.
In Scotland. Samantha, are you familiar with the Findhorn community?
No.
It's sort of the probably the best known and maybe the most successful. I guess they call them intentional communities. They're spiritual communities where people live together communally and harmonically, and essentially stay in balance. Kind of what's interesting to me about intentional communities is that they are able to stay in balance and in honoring of all for a long time. Whereas when an intentional community falls out of balance, we call it a cult. We know what a cult is because it doesn't honor the free will of all, and it doesn't honor all beings. So a hierarchy happens where we end up looking at some people's will. You know, we're looking at a lot of sort of like human power dynamics when we're looking at a cult. Often control, the issue of control, wanting to control others comes up. But in an intentional community, what begins as harmonic continues as harmonic. And we don't have that many examples of those. And the community in Findhorn is a really good example of that. So anyway, Michael was there.
Mandy, you've been there, I take it.
I've never been there. In fact, I was meant to go in 2020, the year in which, you know, my international travel stopped.
Yeah.
So I was meant to go to Findhorn at that time. Anyway, never made it. But so Michael is the fourth of our quartet. So we did this 2-day peace event, which was on Saturday. This was 2 weekends ago. The Saturday was a big peace concert, a big event, also a civic event. A peace pole was gifted to the city of Ojai, and the mayor was there to accept it. And I had curated the music, and all the musicians played with a peace intention, and I gave a peace talk, and also wrote a new poem for the event about peace itself. So that was the concert, and then the next day was a peace ceremony that was smaller, but was really beautiful. Fumi John Stewart led this beautiful ceremony where she calls it a flag ceremony, but we had a peace pole there, and every nation in the world is invoked and laid down. The flags are laid down in a mandala around the peace pole, with the intention of may peace prevail on earth. The mandala flag ceremony takes about half an hour. The whole audience participates. You are walking in a circle, you're given a flag. Anyway, it's a very beautiful ceremony. So it was a 2-day event. Took me 2 or really 3 weeks to kind of prepare for it, because I was also bringing together all the elements of the concert day. And then that was about 2 weeks ago, and I will be starting up my peace class again soon. I got intuitively to delay the start by a month or a month and change, because it is being indicated to me that it is important for me to learn how to have more technical savvy in terms of recording these classes and cutting together the video of the peace talk and sharing it, and learning how to navigate social media, which I've really never engaged with before. And on the technical side of things, it's not my natural area. I'd rather like cut something out of paper to make a flyer than learn how to use a graphic design program. But it was indicated to me intuitively that it's time for me to kind of clear space to learn how to do that, so that there's more sharing.
No, that's good.
So,
that's good. Yeah, brilliant. Well, thank you very much, Mandy, for all that, and congratulations on what you've been doing. It's wonderful. We love it.
Thank you.
Do you want to go next, Samantha, or shall I do a little thing?
I'm happy to share about what I've been doing. But it's up to you, Thomas.
Well, let me give some feedback, just a bit of feedback to Mandy before you go. This isn't my turn. This is just a couple of comments. So I have been to Findhorn quite a few times. I've spoken there. I've done talks, and I don't know if you guys know, but their Universal Hall burnt down a couple of months ago. And they think it was an arson attack. Now, this is a real tragedy, because that was the hub of the community. It was a huge wooden structure where they had all their really big workshops and stuff. Somebody deliberately burned it down. We don't know who yet. I don't want to sound too paranoid, but it's very weird. There's tremendous conflict happening in the UK over Scottish bid for independence. I'm a supporter of Scottish independence. But within the space of 2 weeks, two iconic landmarks in Scotland both caught fire. And, one was the Universal Hall in Findhorn, and the other was they had like an observatory. It was a famous observatory looking at the stars. It was doing unique stuff. Suddenly that caught fire and burned down. It was to me, I don't want to sound paranoid, but I know there's some forces really don't want Scottish independence. And it was as if they were saying, oh yeah, independence, look, this is what we can do. We're gonna take out your iconic sites. Now, whether one believes in, are people really that nasty? Actually, I think they are, because what's at stake is Britain's nuclear weapons fleet. And the British state, which has done Brexit, and which I oppose virulently, doesn't want to lose its nuclear weapons mooring site in Scotland. So they're arguably using psychological warfare tactics against the Scottish independence movement. So anyway, I just throw that into the mix, a little bit of reality check there. And
well, that which is important about gathering at Findhorn is not on the material plane. So you can burn down the buildings, you can burn down all the buildings, and it will never take down that which is important that has gathered at that site.
Thank you. Yeah. And also, yes, absolutely. That's, if that was intentional, and then obviously it's not going to win, because the Scottish independence movement is strong and deep, and that's the people that founded Findhorn, Eileen Caddy, and the others were all deep mystics in their own right, and that, as you say, can't be shocked. Yeah, the other little comment was, yes, about Krishnamurti. Yeah, I did meet him. I heard one of his last ever lectures, and I know I've studied Annie Besant's work, obviously, and Alice Bailey in great depth, and I referenced them all in my doctoral thesis on transpersonal history, because as I explained last time we chatted, I coined this concept of transpersonal history. We should look back over the way we do historical research and no longer talk about, battles, kings, dynasties, wars, but talk about the spiritual searching of people and what we've been doing on the inner planes. And obviously those three were all pioneers of that. And I've gone through their work with a fine-tooth comb, trying to find, because they make claims about history that's quite interesting. What can we extract that's actually useful as historians? You said they were looking forward to a time of light. Okay, so what does that mean concretely? And how do we know when we get there? Like Sat Yuga. I've asked loads of different gurus and transpersonal thinkers, you know, when we get to the golden age, and they all say different things. And so that's kind of frustrating historically, but I'm working on it. I'm working on it.
Well,
Mm.
I'll just throw my few cents in and say the characteristics of a loving, peaceful society are standard, and that's a society in which all beings are honored, a society in which the land is honored, in which the waters of the planet are acknowledged as holy, and one in which our own uniqueness is honored and steps forward. So they tend to be places of great flowing creativity, because the holiness of the individual expression of each person is honored. So those are some standard some standard characteristics of peaceful societies.
Right. Good. Well, I think that's what we're all working towards. Anyway, Samantha, why don't you share what you've been up to over the summer? We haven't spoken for a while, and tell us what you've been doing.
So I don't actually remember if the last time we talked, I was still at my prior job, but
No, I think you left it. You were doing work with ions, I think.
Oh yeah, okay.
Yeah.
So I was affiliated with ions for a little while, but I realized that what I was trying to express, what I had been learning about myself throughout my personal journey, was expanding beyond the limitations I felt with my affiliation with ions. So I decided to move away from that affiliation and really just step into my own mission. I don't really like referencing it as work, because it's not work to me. It is what I find to be my purpose, what I find to be my mission, and that is really embracing my unique expression, my unique divinity. And I find that divinity is within each individual, every single person, every single thing. Nothing is separate, everything is one. And we are all part of the whole of creation, and creation being divine love, the original thought. And so recently, I have really just been doing a lot of very deep contemplation and more self-reflection, just on a totally deeper level than I had before. I've been meditating quite a bit, and meditation wasn't a practice that I really regularly committed to until the last probably month, I would say, month and a half maybe. And I'm fortunate enough to have the time and the resources to be able to put into the I'll just say work, for lack of a better term, the work that I'm doing right now. And so it's really just a matter of continuing to work on my own self-progression and my own self-development, and sharing and being of service to really all of humanity, and trying to exemplify love in its highest form, its highest frequency, because I completely believe that everything is just energy, nothing is physical. It's all a matter of how we resonate with the infinite frequencies within and without us. And so you know, love being the highest form of frequency, and really trying to just obtain and attain that frequency. And so even before this call, I was debating with myself, and I was going down a rabbit hole of meaning and debating with myself about definitions, but sort of just going in a cycle and just realizing that the intellect, as helpful as it can be in expanding and becoming aware of certain things, I just find that true answers, true awareness, and true knowing is within. And the intellect can provide guideposts for shining light, but the intellect really just creates more questions, whereas going within, really, you develop your true understanding. And so it's just, what I'm doing now is just trying in every which way I can to express and exemplify what it is to love. But it's unique for everybody, so.
Sure. Well, thank you for that. That's great testimony to what you've been doing. Can I go next and say a little bit about what I've been doing? So I'm going to share something. I don't think I've shared this before, but for the last 6 weeks, up until like a few days ago, I had a visitor staying with me from Syria, who was a Syrian Christian Orthodox young lady in her, like, I don't know, early 30s. Highly intellectual. She's done her degrees and all that stuff. She was expert in cultural heritage, and I wrote a reference for her to get a job at UNESCO. Fingers crossed she'll get it. Running the Middle Eastern sacred sites and natural heritage centers throughout the whole Middle East. It'd be a great job. But she's an Arabic speaker. So she translated my interfaith peace treaty that I'm the author of into Arabic. I've been looking for someone to do this for the last like 6 years since I wrote it, because it's really important to reach the billion Muslims on the planet, to have it in Arabic. And now it's in Arabic, so I'm really happy. I'm about to send it out, you know, because this is a declaration of peace between the religions of the planet, Christians, Muslims, Jews. Her poor country of Syria had a meltdown and a civil war, which she described to me in great detail. She's from a Christian minority community. It's Alawites, who are a sort of branch of Islam that run the country quite ruthlessly. And then there are Sunnis and Shias, and everyone's fighting everyone. And it was a total nightmare. She described it to me. So, of course, it was totally appropriate. She came all this way to translate that thesis, that treaty, which, by the way, I'd love it if you both signed it. It's open for signing. I'll put in chat the website. You just go on the website and read it. If you like it, sign it, you know. And it's really saying we as religious people will not fight other people over religion. We will rather sublimate disagreements, like, is God a trinity, or is God a one, or is God a whatever, you know, we'll a goddess or whatever, we'll sublimate that into scholarship and discourse and so on. And meditation is just common sense, really. But gosh, this is a slow planet, right? Anyway, she did that, and then the other thing she did, and this is the exciting bit, the other exciting bit, she turned out to be an artist. She came as like a workaway volunteer, and I've had a bunch of these people. This one was a brilliant artist. And a few years ago, I went to the graveside of Leonardo da Vinci, who died close to where I live in France. And I communed with his spirit and all that. And he told me to build a nonagon on top of the Pentagon and other things. We had some conversations. And anyway, this girl turned up. She looked like a young female Leonardo da Vinci. She had the hair, the face. And she said, I always wanted to be Leonardo da Vinci when she was growing up. And she could paint in almost as much detail as him. You know, and so what I did, I've been working on designing a tarot pack, which I've had up my sleeve for the last 10 years, looking for an artist So I, of course, enrolled her, and she did the drawing, the paintings of, you know, the requisite number of tarot paintings. So now I'm working on the book to go with the paintings. And what's so exciting about this project, and this is kind of like confidential, really, is that it's the first ever tarot of the gods. There are countless tarots of the goddesses, and you can go to any New Age bookshop anywhere in the world and buy like 10 different goddess tarots. You can get tarots of everything, Celtic, Wiccan, you name it. But you've never been able to get a tarot of the gods, either male divinities of history and religions. So I carefully selected which are the most important gods I think needed on this planet at this time in manifestation. Obviously, you've got the big ones like Yahweh, Allah, Vishnu, Shiva, but then I've put in lots of like Druid gods and you know, American Indian ones. We've got some from Inti, from way down in South America, the Peruvian. We've got, you know, I had real fun. We've got a Bon god from the Tibetans. We've got Tengri, who's the shamanic god of the Siberian shaman people. And we've got Polynesian god, etc. So it's a sort of multicultural pack, and it's a real lesson in religious studies for anyone that buys the pack and uses it, because you learn what the gods are, what they're capable of, and why they're important. And also, you see, what I'm trying to say by doing this tarot pack is like it's time to end the war between the gods. I'm not going to kill you if you think Allah is better than Yahweh, or the Trinity is better than both of them, or Vishnu is the top god, or you know, whichever. So it's my little offering to the world's, let's say, esoteric community, kind of people that use tarot, to like do some interfaith studies, to learn about these different gods and honor them. Because the other thing, I think the problem on the planet at the moment, I mean, there are so many problems we don't know where to begin, but men have lost their way. The male of the species is confused. You know, women have had their women's movement very successfully since the 60s and got liberated and do their thing, have millions of women's empowerment groups and all that. And I support that 100%. I'm a feminist myself. But men don't really know what to do with that, because hitherto they were defined as being the protector, the wage earner, the aggressive one, the one that joins the army and feeds the family. And that's gone. You know, there aren't the jobs, there's not the security. So men are turning into like nervous wrecks, really, often. And young men are often committing suicide. It's higher rates of suicide among men in the Western world than women. So I think that strong women need strong men to match and meet and balance them. So the tarot of the gods is to try and give men some self-esteem back. Hey, these are your role models. This is what you should be aspiring to. And by the way, Jesus, I had fun with this card. Jesus is the 10 of water. You know, I got the suits, earth, air, fire, water. And so Jesus is, the painting that she did is like Leonardo da Vinci's Last Supper, only it's what I call the after party, because it's only the Gnostic disciples who are left staying up. The others, like Peter, have all gone to bed. You've got Mary Magdalene, St. John and Thomas having a close Gnostic chat with Jesus in the after party. That's the 10 of water cards. So, you know, there's a lot of humor in this deck of tarot. And I've been writing the text that goes with it. It's going to take me till Christmas, by which time I hope to publish it, and I will be sure to let you know when it's available. And so that's the most exciting thing. I discovered someone, Mandy. I don't know if this name rings a bell. Have you heard of a guy called Ian Press?
I don't think so.
Okay, weird. He was professor of Russian at St. Andrews, and I thought he must be a friend of your friend or something.
Probably.
But he's also a tarot expert, and he helped write a scholarly book on the history of the tarot with a guy called Michael Dummett. So this guy, Ian Press, was because I've been going through all the existing tarots and culling from them stuff of use, you know, And there's a whole field of tarot scholarship that interests me. I've been looking at the history of it all and where they came from and all that. But yeah, so I've been deeply into tarot studies in the last little while. And it was great having this Syrian here working away. So this is my secret tool for planetary enlightenment and rebalancing. Because love, as Samantha rightly says, is the key. But if we're going to go on doing this male-female thing, then we have to get the males worthy of the females, is how I would say. And that's what my little tool's about. Okay, there we go. That's my little go.
Well, beautiful. And here's why I love that you're working with a card deck format for that, is because so I work with oracle decks, which are like, it's like working with a tarot deck, but they're fresh energy. So I love working with oracle decks because when you're working with an oracle deck, there might be 70 different cards in that deck. And when you're asking a question and you're shuffling the card, it's giving the opportunity for any one of those 70 voices to step forward with some wisdom to share. And there is naturally an equality between them because all of the decks, there's one card and they're all the same size and the same weight and they have the same, backing and the same finish. So the cards are inherently equal. It's not like there's a giant one and and the format creates an ease so that anyone can step forward who has a particular insight on that topic. And when we can look at the world's spiritual traditions in the same way, not as being at odds, but being specialized. So it's the same as, having a university where you can say, well, this question, I might get some wisdom from the physics department, and then I might get a different wisdom from the ancient Eastern studies department. And all of these wisdoms are worthy and useful. And if I have them all coordinated in one place, it just means it's an efficiency of calling on information. That's the fun for me, being on a university campus, is that there are all of these traditions that are represented, and we celebrate the diversity of their viewpoint and their background and their training, and we appreciate that it is the uniqueness, the diversity, the variousness that creates the richness. And so to have it in a tarot card format or an oracle deck format is a way to say there is so much that is available to us that could be enriching to us, and let's put it all in one place and let's let these traditions step forward and say, I have something to share. When we communicate with the higher dimensions, when we communicate with those who are more evolved than we are in this dimension, there's a porousness between bodies. So that's why often when we communicate with higher dimensions, we're speaking not to individuals, but we're speaking to like groups or councils. And the reason for that is there's a natural porousness between the consciousnesses, and the way that they work is that they're able to come together in a group format or a council format. And then sometimes one individual consciousness will step forward using its individuality because it's useful in that moment. And then sometimes that consciousness will inherently blend with the others because it's more useful as a component of the group. And without the ego, there is a natural coordination. It's in the experience of oneness away from the ego. There isn't what you experience here in this realm where it's a preference, let's say, for being the speaker, or the idea that it's better to be the speaker than to be a more supporting element. There's no preference there. It's just about efficiency. How can we best serve? How can we best get this job done? And within that, there's no preference for being in one position or another position. So I love working with decks for that reason, because it really is about efficiency and not about how we would see it, this sort of preference or favoritism.
That's very interesting, and that leads me to something else I've been doing, which Samantha might comment on. I've attended a couple of the Scientific and Medical Network / Galileo Commission meetings, and one was by a guy called Christopher Batch or Bache, and he spoke brilliantly. Was that the one you were at, Samantha, or were you at the other one with Galileo Commission? Because I know at one point I noticed you were there.
You know, honestly, Thomas, I don't recall people's names. So I can't say definitively if that was the one that I was at, but I was at one probably, what was it, 2 or 3 weeks ago?
Yeah, I think you were at the one that was like a bunch of us, and there were like a panel of speakers and all that.
Yes, yeah.
The other one that I attended, which I'll share with you both, was he's a professor of religious studies at a university in the States. He's called Christopher Bache, B-A-C-H-E. And he talked about a book he's written about education and the paranormal. He described very interesting biographical data that he was giving his classes, and his students would all start having like telepathic experiences and synchronicities and all that. He got into studying that, and he was, by the way, in secret. He didn't tell his boss at the time. He spent 10 years doing self-administered therapeutic LSD research on the side into the nature of consciousness. So he was using psychedelics to augment his normal thinking in a rational and scientific way, you know, but it took him on some very deep journeys, he told us. And he said that he realized after a while of teaching religious studies in his university, which was back east somewhere like Pennsylvania, that knowledge is really not an individual thing. It's not like what you know, Mandy, or me, or Samantha. It's a learning field. So it's a learning field that can be augmented or diminished depending on what we do to the field. And it can be shared. So we can transmit deep thoughts to each other, which don't really belong to us individually. They're insights that bubble up in the soul, which is a collective thing. He's come to the view that the soul is a collective phenomenon, and therefore intellect is not an ego-owned or possessive thing. It's a shared, common, universal thing. And if I can work on my enlightenment and get my intellect finely tuned, and then I sit with you and we have a class, and you do the same from a slightly different angle, we both come away more enlightened. So he says that conventional education is stuck in old paradigm stuff. The teacher's there pumping information into the student who regurgitates in an exam. He says, no, we've got to throw that model away. We're a collective learning field, and that we need to develop institutions where that is honored and acknowledged. And then we can all like get learning much faster. Anyway, so that's just a summary of his research, and he gave a brilliant talk about it. He's written books about it all, and you know, he was a lovely man, very humble actually for someone that's done such deep work. His famous book is called Dark Night, Early Dawn. I'll put it in chat. So he's a pioneer of transpersonal psychology and philosophy. And I'd known of his work for years, and here I was actually in a seminar with him. It felt great, you know. But I do think that's true. It fits with what you were both saying about, you know, learning is egalitarian process whereby the oversoul manifests through each one of us, you know, as appropriate.
I have many, many comments, and I feel like most of them will probably get lost in the abyss of my brain. But what I will say first, in response to that, Thomas, is, and I will just also preface this by saying it's all just my personal belief. What we live in is a life of experiences that teach us. And I feel like this concept has probably been tossed around for millennia, that life is a school, that we are perpetually in school. But I really do believe that that is 100% true. Life, I was actually thinking about this the other day. I've been hearing so often about suffering, that part of the human condition is to suffer. And I really challenge that with the question of, is it really part of the human condition to suffer? Or is suffering just a perception of challenges and opportunities that we continue to face throughout our lifetime? And these challenges or these opportunities are sort of two sides of the same coin, but these opportunities often present themselves as challenges, and they teach us lessons in disguise. So it is up to us as individuals to really be able to discern what those lessons are. And the lessons, in my opinion, are to expand our awareness of our divinity and who we really are. And to go back to what you were talking about with the tarot, I also recently, since I've been meditating more, have also committed to tarot. Tarot was never really a practice that I engaged in until the last several weeks, and it has had profound impacts on my perspective of life, and in very, very, very positive ways. I completely advocate for all tarot, and I know there are many forms of tarot. They're all so interesting. But when you were talking about, Mandy, the different sort of segments, like the individuality, but also the collectivity of it, I think that that also really speaks to the ego, because it's a diffusion of the ego. It's a vanishment of the ego. And to me, the ego has been an evolutionary adaptation of humankind to help us learn the lessons that we're here to learn. And it's had a purpose. It has always had a purpose, and it still does have a purpose. Everything has a purpose. And the ego is something that we have to learn how to manage. I think it may always have a purpose for humanity, but in understanding who we really are on an individual level and on a collective level, I think that that will really assist men also, both men and women. It's all the same. It's an understanding of, this is who I am inside, within me. I only need divinity. I only need love. Everything else that I seek to understand externally from myself, everything I look for to gain outside of myself, is really an illusion. And it's, all the answers are within. So I think that for men to understand that, really what it sounds like is they are looking for validation outside of themselves. They are looking for confidence of who they are outside of themselves, when really it's within. They need to look within.
Sure. Yeah. Mandy, it's your turn, I think. What thoughts have you got about this?
Well, let's see. I have some notes from a little earlier in the conversation where, Samantha, you were talking about how in the last month or 6 weeks, you've really felt called to meditation. And this, I'm not surprised by that at all, because these times, this historic moment is very challenging and will become impossible to navigate without our own individual intuition guiding us. it is a moment in which the external guideposts that most have been relying on are coming down. People are no longer able to give their power away and to give their thoughts away to intermediaries, like the news, for example, or trusted publications that in the past they might have said, well, I will get my ideas or I will get my beliefs from this trusted publication. Those old signposts saying this is left and this is right and this is up and this is down, those signposts are all coming down so that we are in an unindicated landscape, and only at that point we will, and we've arrived there, we need our own intuition that will guide us, because that which we have relied on, if we have used these intermediaries in the past, all of that is going away. And so based upon that, it is in meditation, but especially in silent meditation, in which we sit observing the silence and really joining the silence and becoming the silence and becoming the true openness, becoming the true emptiness, when we create within ourselves that which is truly open, that which is the universal love that is all, enters us. Also, it connects us to our own highest knowing, our own intuition. We can hear our heart's voice and we can hear what is right for us. This historic moment is about using our own intuition, our own knowing, to know what is right for us, and walking forward in a way that acknowledges who we are, what we're here to do, and what is right for us. If we can do that with an honoring of all other beings, honoring of their path, even if it might be so different from ours, that's where the true evolution is. It is the path of doing what is right for us, and doing what is right for us without that old dichotomous, what we are taught in the world of dichotomy, which is to choose something is necessarily to reject its opposite. We evolve out of that and say, I can choose what is right for me, and I can honor all other people choosing what is right for them. And that's how we transit these times, first of all, in our own integrity, but also in a general healing and evolution. It is by holding the honoring of others. So if meditation has been calling to you now, it is also because your highest knowing wants to be known by the conscious part of you, to give you that North Star that you will need and increasingly need, because in the coming months, it already is impossible to navigate by the externals, but it will become even more impossible.
Yeah. Wonderful.
Yeah, well said. I want to share a spiritual experience I had last night that I think you might be interested in. Because I do a lot of my deepest work in sleep, in dreams, and in what I call downloads. It's like a reverie. I'll get an idea and I record it. So I have a recording device by my bed. Last night, I was on some, God knows, some plane of being where I was talking about education and spirituality and all the rest of it. And I don't know if you've realized, but one of the things I set up back in like the year 2000 was something called the Global Green University. So it's an alternative higher education institution. It's a university, but it's different in that it's global. So it's not the University of Oxford or London or whatever. It's global. It's a planetary university, and it's a green university in that we are concerned about the fate of the world, the environment, and peace. You know, we don't take money from the normal places universities get money from, which is the military. So it's a kind of it's got a unique little niche. And I had this incredible download, like at about 4 this morning. of what I should put on the website, like of my new rector's blog, because I've been a bit coy about this, you know. And I suddenly, it was like, came down into me, which I recorded. I'll be writing this up and posting it in the next week or so. And it's a phrase I've coined called meta Mahayana. So what's the epistemology of the Global Green University? Okay, it's meta Mahayana. And this is very much Krishnamurti, Alice Bailey, you know, perspective, which is, you know the difference between Theravada and Mahayana Buddhism. Mahayana Buddhism works for your enlightenment plus everyone else's, the collective. But Meta Mahayana works, and I think Gary Snyder has also used this phrase. It works for the enlightenment, whatever cultural or religious situation you're in. So if you're Jewish and you're living in Tel Aviv, or you're a Muslim living in Mecca, or a Hindu living in Delhi, or whatever, Meta Mahayana is not insisting you become a Buddhist in the narrow sense of the term. What it is saying is activate your buddhi, which is the Sanskrit word for intellect, in the highest and most purified form, right? So a Meta Mahayana epistemology says that we need to reframe our use of academia. The point of the Global Green University is not just like to carve out a little niche as a green university. No, it's much more radical. It's like, let's enlighten each other and the world by using the academic disciplines, things like history, geography, sociology, maths, physics, all of that stuff, but adding in, sprinkling in the magic fairy dust of enlightenment potential. So the transpersonal dimension of thought, which is what I did my doctorate on. I sneaked it through the University of London and did this thing on transpersonal history. But actually, there's a transpersonal sociology, there's a transpersonal biology, there's a transpersonal mathematics, all waiting to be explored. That's the next 100 years for academia, right? And literature as well. Let's look at the transpersonal dimensions of the great poems and novels and plays. So anyway, the download I got late last night, 4 a.m., was, well, let's do it, you know, and my duty as rector of this university is actually like to call people to say, hey, this is what we're doing, let's do it, you know. So instead of grumbling at conventional academia and saying, oh, it's tedious, they make you do this, that, and the other, and they won't let you join up thoughts, and you have to do this discipline, and you can't do that, and that, and that. So what we're saying is, if the Green University stands for anything, it's the throwing away of that old rule book that says all knowledge is separate, knowledge is owned by people, knowledge is owned by experts, knowledge is very difficult, you have to spend years acquiring it and get bitter and twisted in doing so. And then when you've got a bit, you fight off other people from getting it, you know. That's conventional academia, right? And you publish in your little reviews where your mates are all chums and they're all publishing. You know, it's totally corrupt, right? So the Global Green University is saying, look, hang on, this isn't good enough for this planet. If we stick with that model of academia, we're going down. This spaceship Earth is crashing, right? It's already on fire. It's like can't feed itself. It's got pandemics, blah, blah. So anyway, it was a brilliant download. There must have been some angel passing over the house here in France. And I'm still like, yeah, fortunately, I recorded it all. Now I'm going to type it up. I just thought I wanted to give you that little sneaky preview of the Meta Mahayana epistemology of the Green University in relation to academic transformation, which, you know, I think that's part of my work, what I'm doing as well. Yes. So any comments, feel free.
I think there are many social narratives that are meeting their, well, let's just say the conditions are ripening for many social narratives to shift. I think that's the politest way I can put it. It'll be interesting to see sort of how it all transitions, how it all plays out. I actually, kind of oddly enough, find it really exciting to see how this, as people are kind of calling a new world, come about. it's the energy recently, well, not recently, but probably within the last several months, I think the energy has just really, really intensified, but also from my understanding, the way where the planet is right now in the cosmos is as the planet is aging, I think. So it's like almost a culmination of it aging maybe, and where it is in space is the energy, there's an energy influx. And so the planet is increasing in its capacity to hold higher frequencies. And as humans are born of the earth, we are also increasing, our cellular structure is increasing in its capacity to hold higher frequencies of energy. And so as we're consuming really and resonating with this higher energy, I think for people who don't have much of a background in spirituality or don't really have the tools to quite understand what's going on, it really appears and feels probably scary and frightening and chaotic, very chaotic. And I mean, it does appear chaotic. It appears that we live in a world of violence, and it appears that we live in a world of aggression and control, manipulation and fear and judgment. But these lower frequency energies are not all that exist, and they don't have to be the energies that we resonate with. You know, we choose what we resonate with if we understand that we have that choice. And so I just think it's exciting. I'm really glad that I chose to be a part of all of this in this incarnation. And so,
yeah. Well, welcome aboard. Yeah. Mandy, what do you want to respond to what I was saying about academia?
So an evolved academia acknowledges that intellect that is in service of the heart's knowing, or intellect that is here to work as a tool to help explain or translate the heart's knowing, is the highest calling of the intellect. We have this gorgeous mental capacity. Why? Why is it here? Everyone, it has been in the past part of the human experience to have these two centers of information: the heart, which is a receiving place. In the place of the heart, we receive our highest knowings information, which is connected to all that is. And the intellect, or the mind, which also has access to information, all that we've ever experienced, can be coordinated in the kind of computer hard drive and computer workings of the intellect. So we have two very useful centers of information in the body. However, when we come to really understand that the heart has access to all information, not just that which we have observed or been taught in this lifetime, but all that anyone, anything, any being has ever experienced anywhere in the universe ever. Also, all that is. Also, that the information that is so loving and so peaceful and so high vibrational that it's never even been translated into any kind of language or experience. It's just the true unconditional love that is all that is. So our heart has access to all of that. The intellect has these gorgeous tools of understanding, of explaining, and when they work together, and when the tools of the intellect are in service of the heart's knowing, that's when that which is the product of the intellect becomes inherently balanced. And so right now, universities are places in which you can stumble across moments of great intuitive knowing and great insight because the person who was working within an intellectual field at that moment was also heart-centered and heart-led. But it is, universities are kind of a hodgepodge of information that came through through a heart's knowing, and information that was strictly deduced or strictly mental, and in fact is almost intentionally divorced from the heart's knowing. And so it's inconsistent in that way. So when the heart's knowing, the intuition is, right now the intuition is not counted. It doesn't count in the intellectual sphere. When its knowing is returned to its proper place, and revered as it should be, as a way of connecting with the divine impulse, which is holy, then our intellectual systems will return to balance.
Yeah. I mean, I think this is the conversation that's going on in the Galileo Commission, which Samantha came to one of our meetings, and it was going on at IONS. So people like Dean Radin have discovered experimentally that the heart knows what image is coming up on the screen before it's even on the screen, you know. So we have things like precognition and other skills like telepathy and whatever that defy the intellect's achievements at the moment, but we can't deny they exist. And more scientists are realizing that. So the whole project of science, I mean, I think we should rename conventional scientists nescientists, which means, you know, nescience is the opposite of science, because they've narrowed down their frames of reference so much, misusing their intellect. They don't examine the phenomena they're studying in relation to anything else. They just, I mean, I know scientists who just work on proteins or a particular aspect of proteins, or just work on some aspect of the physical universe, and they take a delight in not relating it to bigger picture issues. Whereas I think that there are new thinkers coming along, and you are both examples of that, you know, and long may you flourish. And I would say invade and infiltrate academia, or help create other pockets like you're doing at the Institute for Philosophical Research, you know, where you can do the thinking out of the box and draw on the kind of, because there's always been this undercurrent, this esoteric stream, and things like Freemasonry and Rosicrucianism and alchemy and all that lot, the Hermetic tradition, which has known all this, the interconnectedness. If you look at the Hermetic texts, they're full of this kind of deeper knowing, you know, of the heart, as is Hindu philosophy, which the heart chakra is where the Jivatma lives, which is the actual soul. It's a little tiny flame that lives in the heart chakra, you know. So it's very exciting. How is the Institute of Philosophical Research? Are you back there? Are you still working there, Mandy?
Yeah, so I was, after a couple of years as the artist in residence there, I was given a permanent position there as the writer in residence, and that very grateful for that. Thank you. And that just started. So that transition over to the writer in residence, which I love because it encompasses both the poetry, which is how I landed at the institution, and then the piece work, which is prose entirely just about, which is really a work of explanation as well. So I'm grateful to be there doing both things.
That's brilliant. Yeah. You did suggest you'd put me in touch with someone that might want me to do some courses. So, you know, have a word with them. I haven't heard from the boss. Sent me a contact saying this guy's in charge of courses, and I emailed him like 3 months ago, and I never heard back from him. So if you meet him in the coffee shop, tell him Thomas is still up for doing something.
Well, just honestly, Greg, I think, is the one that I introduced you to. He's the president. I told him all about you, so he knows who you are. So
sure.
Skip whoever he connected you with, and just write to Greg and say,
back.
here's something I would like, just pitch him a class if you want to teach there. I'm sure he'll say yes. So
Okay.
forget whoever he connected you with, just pitch a class to
Yeah,
Greg.
'cause,
and
I
I'm
will.
sure he'll say yes.
And just to finish my little bit, I want to share one last thing about my tarot book that I think you'll both enjoy. I was working today on the spreads because, you know, tarot is one thing, it's what spreads you use. So I've invented a whole bunch of spreads, either using 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, or 10 cards. And I've been drawing on my own, you know, work with the tarot over the last 30 years. And exploring different cosmological models, like the 10 spread is the tree of life, the 10 Sephiroth. So you draw a card for each of the 10 Sephiroth. What can that god, because they're all gods, don't forget, what can that god do to help you in that region of your life? Say Malkut, what do you need to do physically, materially? How's your body? You know, do you need to check up with the doctor, that kind of stuff? And if so, Shiva can help or whatever. So that's the 10 card spread. Then there's a 6 card spread, which is the Tantric Vajrayana cosmology of 6 worlds. There's the world of the gods, the demigods, the humans, the hungry ghosts, the underworld, and then the world of the animals and nature. And so you have these 6 domains, and in each one, you know, a god can appear and help. And in the course of doing this, and I was playing with patterns and looking at, you know, shapes and stuff, because we've got the pentagram of 5. The 5 card spread is fun too. I coined a word, geometaphysics. I'm always coining new words, like work, spelled W-Y-R-K, which means, because weird is the old Anglo-Saxon word for destiny or fate, weird, W-Y-R-D. And so work is what you do that enhances and augments your true destiny. That's work, which is what we should all be doing, of course. But only once we get a transpersonal laser-like review of economics will that begin to happen. Because economics at the moment is all bundled up in the wrong kind of thinking, that it's about burning up carbon and driving tanks around Salisbury Plain. That's called work. Actually, that's destructive, you know. So anyway, geometaphysics, I love that word. It's like combining geometry and metaphysics. So I Googled, I thought, I wonder if anyone else has thought of this word. I don't want to claim the word if somebody's already got it, right? And lo and behold, there's a website called Geometaphysics, which is dedicated to poetry. And I was reading some of the poems on there, and they're mind-blowingly good. And I just want to share that with you as an example of kind of synchronicity. Just Google geometaphysics. I don't know who the poets are. It's very contemporary. They're writing now in the lockdown. I don't know where they live or anything, but I love the plaintive quality of these poems. You know, poetry is an eternal font that we can all draw on. And yeah, I've had fun with my tarot spreads, I can tell you. I got one for a 9-fold spread, but I thought, which is the 9 muses. So that's that one. And anyway, it'll all be revealed in the book when that comes out. I'll send you a PDF copy of the book, you know. I love your cat, Samantha. I've just noticed him on the sofa.
Yeah, that's become her favorite spot.
She's
Bean.
beautiful.
Her name is Bean.
What's she called?
Actually, her full name is Binyette, but I just call her Bean or Tub Tub because she has a little belly under her. I don't know if you've ever seen those cats. I have like a little bit of a skirt belly, and so I just call her Tub Tub.
Okay. She's very,
Which is very
yeah, the animal world is important too.
indeed.
Yeah. Right. Any other final thoughts? Let's have one last go round and just say any final thoughts. My friend obviously hasn't joined us. It's a shame. You would have loved her, but you know, you can meet another time. She's just about to get the doctorate done, and she's been helping me as co-editor of the Mary Magdalene Studies Journal. So she's quite into Mary Magdalene as a kind of icon of feminist spirituality. And I'll go on. I'll share one last thing. Okay, I'll go first in the go round, right? You were talking about male ego and egotism and stuff. Well, I want to share an example of that. I drop in and listen to a thing called the Belfer Centre in Harvard University in the J.F. Kennedy School of Government. And they have America's most important center for the study of intelligence in the sense of political, spies, espionage, intelligence studies. And it's really interesting. I'm there as an observer. I don't get to speak, but I am hearing these talks by incredibly clever people about, like, for instance, what went wrong with intelligence over Afghanistan. What happened at 9/11, 20-year review. And I'm listening to all these top guys who either work for the CIA now or used to. And I listened to one 2 days ago with a woman, for a change, called, I've got it, Beth Sanner, right? She was the intelligence chief. She's a CIA person who every day used to give President Trump his daily briefing. And she would go through it with him and say, this is what is going on, Mr. Trump. And then wait for his response. And she told us, frankly, she was sharing with us, it's not confidential, it's not private, it's an academic forum. So it's like we're sharing liberally, but she's obviously not giving away state secrets. And the discussion was about the link between, you see, these intelligence people are very clear. They're not to give policy direction. They're just to provide information to the people that are making the policy. So if the American government decides to do X or Y, like invade a country, they can't go to the president and say, don't do that. What they can say is, if you do that, this might be the kind of outcome according to our intelligence sources. And then they have to stop there. There's a red line. They can't sort of try and influence policy. That's the theory anyway. And so that was what the seminar was discussing. And I said in the chat, because they were all talking about this kind of academically and patting each other on the back, these are all seasoned people who are either in academia top level or they're serving agents. It's like a revolving door. And I put in the chat, I said, this is all very interesting, this conversation, but I run a thing called the Centre for Peace Policy Research. What would it be like if the intelligence agencies of the planet reformulated their policy directive as being to create peace on the planet? How would that change the way intelligence agencies see their work? Now, it's a reasonable question, right? We're talking about policy. To me, these people should be doing peace. They shouldn't be embroiling America in wars where it can't win, and it should be trying to prevent World War III. But anyway, strangely enough, my question wasn't asked out loud. They chose not to take that question. So there's a little example of I'm doing my best in that world of, like, God knows what they're called, ego operatives, right? To try and sow little seeds so that next time, they'll think, peace policy, yeah, that's a good idea. It filters through eventually. Because I'm, as you know, my mission is to stop war on this planet. And I think we've got to get the intelligence agencies enrolled for that project. Anyway, that's my last little sharing. I thought you might enjoy that.
Well, I think that these conversations around public policy and public narratives and trying to move away from the current state of affairs is a complex question, but it's also a simple question. And I think that it really just, it's exactly what Mandy was saying before. It's an integration of the mind and the heart. It's really just understanding who we are within ourselves and who we are within the collective. And understanding that because everything is frequency, because everything is love, it's shifting the perspectives. It's shifting our perspectives of other people to be able to understand that other people, no matter their backgrounds, no matter their choices, no matter their locations, we are one. When I look at another person, when I look at you both, when I look at any stranger on the street, I see another unique version of me. I feel the same way when I look at trees. I feel the same way when I look at rivers. We're all in this together. We are all one, just living very unique versions of that. And when you understand the pain or frustration or anger that you've felt in your own life experiences, that empathy extends to every single other person. And so I think that when we talk about peace policies and when we talk about just living life, it's a matter of understanding our own love for ourselves and our own autonomy, our own sovereignty, our own freedoms, and understanding that we don't impose, we don't force, we don't rush. We just continue to live within the flow and organicness of the present moment, and to always be in the present moment. And you know, it's sort of easy to sit and have conversations around these things, but I do understand that implementing them is a whole nother story. And I am not going to profess to be any sort of, have any sort of idea really of how to go about that, other than it starts with the individual. And I think that we're also coming upon a time, I think that the children nowadays, the children are children of the Aquarius age, and they will be bringing us, I think, into the new age. So it's about also the parenting and what we teach our children and how we let them express their truth.
That's a brilliant observation. So when are you two going to have children? Can I be the godfather, please? You know, bring a whole new generation in. You'll be great mothers, I'm sure.
I'm a non-breeder, so I'm not going to. But what about you, Samantha?
Yeah, I think theoretically I would love to have a child someday, but it's not really on my radar at this particular time.
Okay, well, we can have the whole planet as our child, and all the hope, you know.
Exactly.
Mandy, you're last to go round. Final thoughts.
Well, first of all, thank you to both of you who have spoken so beautifully. What a gorgeous and inspiring conversation. I was making some notes, Thomas, as you were talking about the CIA, and you know, the old system, the system that exists now but is dying out now, is based upon separation and based upon the idea that there's not enough for everyone. And so it's based on the idea that information is valuable, and having more information or having information that other people don't have gives you power. It's based upon this idea that power is limited and there's a top dog and a lower dog and all of that. And so people who are drawn to that system, drawn to work in that system, are also people who are here exploring dichotomy, sinking deeply into the experience of dichotomy, arrive, incarnate to say, well, what would it be like if I believed that there were limits? What would it be like if I felt like there wasn't enough for everyone? And so those people are having an experience of dichotomy, but we as a whole collective of humanity are evolving out of that experience. Then that kind of relates to what Samantha was talking about with the new generation, with the children who are arriving. Fewer and fewer and fewer who are born, who incarnate here, will be interested in exploring dichotomy in that way. So we have a couple of choices. We could, unfortunately, I don't think it works as well to try to interface with someone who is here to have a deep experience of dichotomy and say, you know, and try to convince them to have a different kind of experience on Earth. That being said, the human life is, you know, let's say 80 to 100 years long. So they will have their experience for as long as they, you know, the soul chooses to be here, and then they will go off and have some other experience, some other place. So generationally, there is a natural opportunity for the new to arrive by way of those who incarnate. And so something like the CIA, our old government systems, are really our way as humanity of experiencing, having that deep experience of dichotomy. But that is ending. When we step into the mind of oneness, when we step into the era of peace, all information is shared. There is no advantage perceived in having more information or better information. All technology is shared. There is no hoarding of technology. There is no moon race, you know, the best will get to the moon first or whatever. Everything is open source. Everything is shared. And just like earlier when we were talking about the egalitarian of something like a tarot deck, where you can be shaking your deck and you can have Jesus step forward, or you can have an apostle step forward, and there's no hierarchy there. One is not the top of the pyramid and one is not the student. It's just an inherent understanding that every position is valuable and every vantage point is valuable and equally valuable. And sometimes seated at the, you know, the long table of the Last Supper, the person at the head of the table has the vantage point that allows them to best see what is useful to know. And sometimes sitting somewhere else at the table, you happen to have the vantage point that you can share the information that's most useful. So there's a fluidity between all the components where there's no favoritism, there's no higher or lower, and there's no preference among the components, understanding that every position is valuable. So that's the transition that we're seeing. And to your point earlier, Samantha, about feeling excited to be here in these times, yeah, these are very exciting times. The lifetime that we are living will see the greatest shift that any human has ever seen on the history of this planet. We will have been born into one kind of system, and in our however many years we live, we will end our lives in a system that is different on every level. And I'm not talking about technology. I'm not talking about flying cars. I'm talking about the transition literally from a dichotomous worldview, which determines everything. It determines all of our institutions, to a unity worldview, which is going to reinvent every institution we have, from our education system to our government systems to how people interact with each other and everything else. Never in the history of the human race has anyone ever gotten to be born into one kind of system and then also live through in one incarnation to a completely different kind of system, because we've never had this radical of a transition before. So very interesting to be here. Fascinating, wonderful. Also, in equal measure, incredibly challenging to be here as well.
Sure. Thank you for that. Before I say goodbye, I'm going to just share one last book with you guys. Hegel and the Hermetic Tradition, and this is by a guy called Glenn McGee, who was the speaker at the event Samantha and I were at with the Galileo Commission about consciousness. Because when you're talking about dichotomous civilizations, and that's the problem, the joke is Hegel, way back, 200 years ago, in his logic, he created the idea of synthesis, that you have your dichotomy, and then you have, emerging from the dialectic of the oppositional forces, you have a higher resolution in a synthesis. And so Hegel's logic set out the path that, in a sense, we still haven't caught up with. And that's why it's really frustrating as a philosopher of history to see, when I said earlier, this planet's really slow. I mean, I meant it. This planet is really slow at getting it. And so, yeah, we're trying still to catch up with that concept of dialectical synthesis, of opposition. I call it, in Druid speak, I call that paradoxical simultaneity. Everything is also its opposite simultaneously. But that's a Druid insight, because the Druids thought of the world as spirals, and wherever you are on the spiral, you're also able to jump levels. And that's what quantum mechanics has shown. That's how energy works. It's a spiral quantum effect of leaping about, So anyway, look, it's been lovely to talk to you. We've done lots of leaping about and lots of synthesis. And let's dedicate the rest, before we meet again, let's carry on with our separate engagement in this sacred cause of peace and wisdom. And I honor deeply what you guys are doing. And please keep it up. And if I can help in any way, just get in touch. I'm always here as a resource.
I appreciate you both very much, and your time and your wisdom as well. Thank you.
Yeah. Okay. Shalom. Salam.
Well.
Yeah.
Until next time.
Yeah. I forgot one last crucial thing. The other thing I've done since we last met is I finished my commentary on the Quran. And it's taken me 10 years, and I just want to say I just finished it. And that is about unity consciousness. I've reinterpreted the Quran from a Druidical Hegelian, meta-Mahayana perspective. I've tried to look at it through the eyes of Gabriel, who downloaded it into Muhammad, and asked, what was this angel really trying to say to Muhammad? And it is exactly as you say, Mandy, it's about unity consciousness. And one of the tragedies of our time is that, the rest of the world decided to have a polarized conflict with the Islamic civilizations instead of a scholarly engagement in which we can discuss different approaches to unity, and that's kind of, so my commentary is mind-blowing. I mean, I think I can't wait for people to begin to listen to it, read it. I want to get, I've even got an academic from Iran saying she wants to type it out and translate it into Iranian, So anyway, I just wanted to share that good news. I've just finished.
Amazing.
Well done, Thomas.
Good job, a lot of work. Anyway, unity rules, right? And synthesis and love. So salam, yes.
Love to you both.
Okay, bye.